Good morning, everyone. Happy Friday. It's that time of week that I look forward to. First of all, saying hi to all of you. And second of all, talking about something I'm very passionate about, photography. So today we're back in the studio, by the way. This is not the green screen. This is the actual studio. We're back in the studio. We're going to be doing some live shooting, but more importantly, we're going to be talking about your camera settings. Now, about 3 weeks ago, we did a live shoot, right before the pandemic really hit hard. I had a model come over. We did social distance, but we did get a live person in to photo shoot. But this time we won't be doing that. We'll have inanimate objects that don't pass any viruses, hopefully. And we'll get a chance to talk all about camera settings, the things we didn't really talk about last time we were shooting. I just kind of put things on, set the camera up the way I normally do. And we did a shoot. And then people were saying, well, what's this? What's this setting? What do you do here? What do you do there? So everyone's liking the shirt. I decided to not wear black today, just kind of switching things up a bit. And I see a bunch of folks already in the chat. Carolyn, Paul, Mike, Steve, Steven, Victoria, Sean, Fred, Carolyn, Tim, Jason Levine's in the house, Alberto, and Andrew. Welcome and thanks for being here. So speaking of that, Jason just reminded me that this is also Masterclass Friday. So what that means is that I'm kicking things off at the 8 a.m. Pacific time slot, but there are master classes all day long. So I do the first one. Then we take a break after that for the Photoshop Daily Creative Challenge. Then Paul Tranny's up doing design in Photoshop, and Jason would normally be up, but he's going to be up today, but he'll be doing something a little different. He's doing a kind of a virtual NAB conference. National Association of Broadcasters, for those that couldn't make it live, obviously in Vegas. And then Howard Pinsky will be up at the end of the day. Actually, Howard and then Kyle Webster will both be up today doing UX UI design and with XD and drawing with Kyle Webster. So we have an action-packed day every Friday for those of you who are here. And if you see me kind of leaning over like that, because I'm normally more in the center of the camera, but I got stuff in the way, so I'm trying not to knock anything over while I do this. But we're going to be taking a look at camera settings. We're going to do some live shooting. We're going to do some Lightroom stuff. We're going to just do everything. Kelby One's in the house as well. Hey, Kelby One. That must be Scott Kelby. John Wilson and Scott Kelby just announced his Lightroom conference today, so go check out kelby1.com. To learn more about the virtual Lightroom conference that'll be happening in a couple weeks. All right, so we have a full house today. Lots of people in the chat, lots of people watching. And by the way, that reminds me, if you're watching somewhere else, if you're not on Behance, if you're watching on YouTube, watching on Twitter, watching on whatever, that's cool. But the chat's happening. In this studio, I only have one chat window open, and that's the one over at behance.net/live. So if you want me to see you and say hi, like I just did, that only happens in that chat, especially today. I can't even see the other chats that are going on. So if you want to watch wherever you are, great. If you're watching the replay, awesome. Love the replay. But if you're watching the replay, I can't talk to you because it already happened. All right. Get the time travel joke? Wasn't much of a joke, but you get the idea. Okay, so with that said, we're going to go ahead and talk about camera settings. We're going to go from the very beginning all the way over for the next 50 some odd minutes, and then we will hopefully get some good results today. I kind of set things up ahead of time, obviously, just to get some of that out of the way, but I'll show you a little bit about what we got set up here, and then you guys will see me work the shoot and talk about settings. So first and foremost, the last time I was on my Nikon D850. Today, I'm on my Nikon Z6 mirrorless camera. Now, doesn't matter if it's mirrorless, doesn't matter if it's a DSLR, doesn't matter if it's new or old. The settings are the settings, and the settings have been around for years and years and years, even before digital. So like what I'm going to be showing you, it doesn't matter if you're Nikon, Canon, Sony, Fuji, Olympus, whatever you are. I can't translate every single camera menu for you, but I will tell you what to look for in your camera to set the right settings. Now I've got two cables coming out of this. I've got the orange cable, which is my standard USB-C tether cable. That's going into my computer. And I've got a second cable today that I don't normally have plugged in, this black cable here. This is the HDMI cable. Now, why do I have an HDMI cable? So that you can actually see what I see. You actually see the camera. So if I turn the dial from auto to P to program mode or to S for shutter priority, you see that all happening live in the camera. So that's what the black cable does. Now, the other thing I just want to let you know, I also took out the memory card. Now, this will vary depending on your camera manufacturer, but for Nikon specifically, or Nikon, having the camera in or having the card in when you tether is actually more of a disservice. The images don't ever go on the card anyway. And if there are images already on the card, every time you turn the camera on, it takes a minute to look at every single image on the card before it will show up in the computer, before the camera will show up to Lightroom. So if you got one image, it takes a second. If you got 1,000 images on the card, it could take a couple minutes. And you're like, why isn't it showing up? It's because you've got that card in there with a bunch of images. Now, if you're shooting Canon, you're shooting something else that can shoot to the computer and the card at the same time, by all means, keep the card in, but put an empty card in. So you don't have that same issue of turning it on and it taking forever to recognize it because you got images on the card. All right, with that said, let's go ahead and get the computer set up, and then I will walk you through what we're going to do. So you can see me, you should be able to see the settings for the camera, and you should also be able to see Lightroom now. And I'm going to come down here to Lightroom Classic, by the way. So if you're wondering, why is he using Classic most of the time instead of the new Lightroom Cloud-based? This is one I use the most, but the real reason I have to use it today is because the Lightroom Cloud-based version doesn't tether. There is no way to plug in your camera and have it shoot right to Lightroom. So Classic is the only one that has that feature. So that's the main reason I'm using Classic today. All right, so I'm going to go to the File menu. I'm going to come down to Tether Capture. We're going to come back to this at the end and explore more options, but I'm just going to get us started for now. So when I do a Tether Capture, you put in the name of your shoot. So I already did that, photography, Masterclass, camera settings. Then that's also going to name the folder that the images will go into. So that's why that name's important. It will also name the images by that name as well. So, or at least that's the way I've got mine set up. So it's going to name it Photography Masterclass Camera Settings 00001.dng because I'm shooting raw. It will also, and you can also change the way it names using the naming setup here. I'm going to start the numbering at 1. Why not? And then this is also very important, you telling it where the images are going to go. So it's going to create a folder. If that folder doesn't already exist, it's going to start putting the images in that folder, but where? On what drive, in what folder, and where do you want them to go? So you would go in and hit choose to choose the location for these images that you're about to capture on your drive, whichever drive you want, internal, external, wherever you want them to go, and that's where they will go. All right, then you can also add them to a collection. And if you don't have a collection, you can create one on the spot. So I'm going to create a collection called Photography Masterclass Settings. All right, and I'm going to put that in current work. Actually, I'm going to put it in demo because that's where it's going to be later. And I can also even sync those to Lightroom in the cloud while it's capturing those and putting them in that collection as well. So I can go ahead and do all of that at the same time and create that collection. Then last but not least, you can set up your copyright metadata template. So if I go edit, we went over this last time, and if I go to mine, Terry White Copyright, you can see that it copyrights, it puts this in the metadata. So your website, your email, your phone number, whatever you type into this template, your copyright URL, if you have a special copyright notice, or where you want people to contact you. So that all goes in there, and that will put that in every single image that it brings in. Then, of course, any keywords that you want to put in as well. So I'm just going to put in rose, because we're going to shoot some roses today, flowers, and whatever generic keywords you want for the whole shoot. And then segment photos by shots. I did not cover this last time. What this will allow you to do, let's say you're going to shoot multiple kinds of flowers. Let's say you're going to shoot roses, you're going to shoot lilies, you're going to shoot petunias, you're going to shoot whatever. You can say segment by shot, and then when you're ready to switch flowers, you can, in the tether bar, go choose and say, now I'm shooting lilies. And then it will put a subfolder called lilies in your main folder. So that way it'll separate each one. But we're not going to do that today. We're just going to click OK. And if all goes well, it sees the camera, it brings up the tether bar, sees the camera pretty quickly because there was no card in there. And if there was a card in there, it wouldn't have any images on it, so that it could see that camera much, much faster. All right, now, what are we really doing today? Well, we're going to talk about settings. We're going to start with the setting I don't ever want you to use anymore. This is the one that your camera probably defaulted to. This is the one that you use when you say, oh my God, I don't know what I'm doing. Just use this setting and it'll take care of it. You know when you pull out your phone and you point it and you just hit the shutter and it snaps a photo? The photo usually looks pretty good. That's because your smartphone is on auto. So it's making all of the adjustments for you. It's choosing your shutter speed, it's choosing your ISO, it's choosing everything about the shot that it thinks from the time you point at whatever it is whatever the subject is. That's great for your smartphone. That's exactly what we need on a smartphone. Because in those moments, you don't really, unless you're shooting something epic that's not moving, not going to go away, you don't want to be messing with settings. You just want to take it out, click, and put it back, put it away, and then go on with your day. But the reason you bought a better camera, whether it's a DSLR, mirrorless, or even one of the little pro mini cameras that have been out for years, the reason you bought one of those is because you wanted something better. You wanted to be able to change lenses. You wanted better quality. You wanted to be able to control the settings. You didn't want to rely on auto. That's why you bought one of these. I'm guessing that's why you bought one of these. So rather than Panasonic, yes, I won't forget Panasonic, rather than constantly rely on that same thing you use on your smartphone because you bought a better camera, let's learn how to use the better camera with all the settings that you have at your disposal. Because it's really not that hard. There's really only 3 settings that you'll be changing on a regular basis. There's hundreds of settings in all these cameras that you can go futz with and play around with. But there's only 3 that if you walk away from this today in the next hour and you master these 3 things, you can take any shot you want, anywhere you want. Everything else is just making those 3 things better. Everything else is just having a better output from those 3 things. So let's start with auto, and let me show you some of the problems with auto. Now, luckily, I'm using a fairly decent mirrorless camera, and so it does not have a pop-up flash. But 9 times out of 10, if you were shooting with a DSLR that had a pop-up flash, this one has one, but there's no battery in it. The minute you turned it on and hit auto and pressed the shutter down halfway to focus, boop, the flash pops up. Because the flash has to pop up to be ready no matter what. And it's going to go ahead and flash, usually when it doesn't even need to. You're shooting something 500 feet away, flash. It's just a waste of time and energy and battery. So auto, if for no other reason, don't use auto because it's not going to pop up the flash all the time. But let me tell you some real reasons why you shouldn't use auto. So I'm on auto right now, and I'm going to go ahead and press my shutter down halfway, and you'll see this bunch of green squares. Well, first and foremost, those green squares, because I also have it on area focus, I have it on completely automatic camera, you figure out what this shot should look like. Well, there's a flower there right in the middle of the shot that it doesn't necessarily think is the focus because there's so many different things in this background. So if I were to shoot this right now, and let's go take a look at it. And let's make sure we're on full screen. Kind of not what I had in mind. it got everything else looking great except the main subject of the photo. Because the problem with auto is auto doesn't guess right all the time. It guessed horribly wrong now. Now, I can move the camera, I can kind of like futz with where it, like kind of fool it into focusing. But if you're doing that, then why are you wasting your time on auto? If you're going to try and fool it, why not just set it? Why not just make sure it's doing what you want? So let's try it again. All right, I will move it this time. Let's see if I can make it focus on the flowers. Not doing a great job so far. Nope. It's like guessing everything else except for the thing right in front of it. That's not going to do it for me. Sorry, auto. But there's one thing I'm going to try. I'm going to go into my info here. I'm going to go to the focus mode. And I'm going to switch it to one of the single point focus modes that lets me tell it what to focus on. All right. And right off the bat, I'm going to get a better shot. Because I just told it what I care about. So I just went off auto area focus mode that I'm going to tell you what the subject is to what I know the subject is. I'm the photographer. I'm the one saying those flowers are the subject. You should shoot the flowers. Duh. So just taking things off auto basically puts you in control. So that was a focus mode that was guessing horribly wrong. I told it single point focus, which all your cameras have, to say this is what you should be focused on, not that thing in the background, not the flower all the way in the background. Now, in that mode, it also made some other guesses and choices that I don't like. For example, it set the shutter speed to 1/160th of a second. It also set my f-stop to f2.8. Okay, give me shallow depth of field. What if I don't want shallow depth of field? It also gave me an ISO of 400 because in order to achieve the shot of 1/160th of a second at f2.8, with the lighting that I have right now, it says, oh, I've got to increase your ISO so that it will expose that properly. I don't want ISO 400. Okay, so let me explain what those three things are, because those are the three things that we're going to talk about today. Those are the three things you really need to know about. Shutter speed, aperture, or f-stop, and ISO. Those three are the three things that really make your shot exposed properly, or exposed to your liking. I won't even say properly. The shutter speed is literally stopping motion. It's like, or not, maybe you want something blurred, but when you have somebody jump up in the air and you click and you don't see any blur, that means that your shutter speed was high enough so that it would freeze the action. You see a car go by, click, you want the car in focus, everything else to be streaks or out of focus. Your shutter speed was high enough to do it. The next thing is the aperture. That's what's making the shallow depth of field. That's what's saying, okay, I'm going to put the flowers in focus and the background out of focus. So the lower that number, the more depth of field you will have, the more wide open you're shooting, the more light you're letting in. The higher that number, the more everything will be in focus. So if you want the person in front to be in focus and the person standing behind them to be in focus, you would make that f-stop number higher. And then last but not least, the ISO at 400, which it can usually go, depending on your camera, 50 or 100, all the way up to thousands, hundreds of thousands actually, depending on the camera. That's controlling the quality of the shot, the quality of the image, the amount of grain or noise you might call it that you would see. So, yep, the exposure triangle. And thanks, Roger, for the compliment on the bass. So that whole setup, Those three things, the exposure triangle, I like that, I'll use that from now on, is what controls what this will do. And you can control all three of those. You can learn to set it to what you want them to be. So for example, auto, as we see, failed miserably because I don't want ISO 400. F28 is nice, but what if I want something else? What if I did want the background in focus? I don't have any control over it in auto because auto's making all the decisions for me. So if you were running by something and you wanted to go click and you didn't have time to set up anything, maybe auto would be okay, but I probably still wouldn't use it because there are better modes even for that situation. So let's talk about your modes and let's talk about everything else. So your camera modes, you have manual, which that's what we're going to learn by the end of the day, by the end of this hour. You have automatic, which is at the very bottom. It's at the bottom for a reason, because after today, I don't want you to ever use it ever again. I'm going to start from the bottom up. Then you have program mode. Program mode, or as we like to joke, P for professional, it's a joke, it's not real, is almost auto. So program mode is basically saying, I'm going to give you some controls. I'm still going to make the majority of the decisions for you, but I'm going to give you a few things you can control, and it will vary depending on the camera. Shutter priority and aperture priority are probably the two, I would dare say, besides manual, that I would say aperture priority and manual are the ones I live in the most. But I would say shutter priority and aperture priority are the ones you should definitely be looking at. What's shutter priority? Howard Pinsky, Team ISO 100, absolutely. Shutter priority says, I'm going to let you choose the shutter speed to freeze your motion or not. I'll worry about the aperture. That's what it means. It's like, I'll change your f-stop based on everything else I see. You worry about the shutter speed. So you get to control. Is the motion frozen or is it blurred? If you're, however you creatively want that shot to look. So I'm not shooting a lot of moving things. I'm a portrait photographer. That's why I don't shoot a lot of shutter priority. If you're shooting a lot of things that are moving, shutter priority might be for you. Aperture priority is my walk around mode, because what aperture priority says is I'm going to adjust the shutter speed based on what you have set for your aperture and your ISO and based on the lighting conditions. So if I need to slow the shutter down to give it more light, I'll do that. If I need to speed the shutter up to capture at that f-stop, I'll do that. So aperture priority, when I'm walking around doing like kind of just travel photography, that's the mode I'm usually on. Because then I'm not having, like I might be shooting something that I need to shoot. You didn't know that was a joke, Kirsty? Yes. Or P for program or professional is actually program mode. But anyway, so aperture priority is kind of my walking around, because usually I'm shooting things that may not be there 5 seconds later. So I may not have time to dial it in manually. So aperture priority is my walk around mode. However, when I do have time, meaning the subject's not going to go away in 2 seconds, manual. When I'm in studio, manual 100% of the time. I am never on any other mode in a controlled environment. Meaning I'm either inside, the setting's going to be whatever I set it up to be, or I'm outside and whatever it is isn't going to go away. So then I'm in manual mode to control exactly the way I want the shot to look. So those are the modes you're going to concentrate on. And if I had to say any takeaway from today would be, we're going to learn manual, but your second choices would be aperture or shutter priority. That's it. Those are the only 3 modes after today I ever want to see your camera on if I ever see you again. I will see you again. If I ever see you in person, I don't want to look at your camera and you're on auto or program. I want you to be on one of those 3. Okay, so now let's go back and let's talk about changing those settings. Okay, so let me switch to program mode. And when I go to program mode, ooh, look, it gave me ISO 100 now. But it gave me F2. And when I snap the shot, this is what it gave me. Not bad. Not going to complain about that. That's okay. At least it gave me ISO 100, so the quality will be better. But what if I want to change the f-stop? I can go higher. So I can say put more things in focus. So I can go up to F11 apparently with program mode. And when I did that, I don't know if you heard it, you could hear it or not, but the shutter stayed open a little longer. Because if I go back and look at those settings now, let's see. Yeah, it's at a ½ second shutter speed. So that means the shutter's going to stay open. What sounds like, man, that's not bad. A ½ second, that's pretty quick. That's an eternity if you're holding the camera in your hand. Because if you're holding it with a slower than 1/60th of a second, you're likely to have a blurry shot. Because you can't hand hold your heartbeat. Everything's going to shake that camera no matter how tight you try and hold it. You can't hold it steady long enough to get the kind of shot that will stay sharp and stay in focus at anything slower than 1/60th of a second. So a ½ second on a tripod, I don't care. But a ½ second hand holding, program mode is going to screw me up. And it doesn't know I'm on a tripod. It just made its guess based on program mode. But at least program mode did let me change my f-stop. Now, and by the way, by going to F11, you can see more of the background. You can see more of the staircase. You can see more of the things that are in the backdrop. And so there's another shot. Okay, now let's go to Aperture Priority. So Aperture Priority lets me do everything I want. I can adjust the aperture. And I can go all the way up to f16, which is what this lens will do. I can change my focus point. So I'm moving that little red square up the base to the flower that I want to focus on. I lost my red square on the red flower. Where'd you go? Oh, there you are. All right, let me move it up a little more to the left. There it is. So now I get a green square letting me know you focused on that spot. The shutter speed adjusted accordingly. In order for me to get f16 at ISO 100, it needed 1/6 of a second. So, or is that one? I can't see it. But anyway, it needed a second to do that. It needed 1.6 seconds. That's what I was trying to say. All right, so now let's say that I'm going to hand hold it. I can't hand hold it that long. Well, in order to properly expose it at f16, the shutter needs to stay open longer at ISO 100. But what if I change my ISO? What if I hold down my ISO button and I don't want to make it auto yet. I bump up the ISO to, let's say, 640. Now, it's a quarter of a second, or 1.4, I can't see it. All right, I want to go higher because I want to be able to hand hold this. So maybe I go up to 2500. That's getting there. ISO, let's go higher. 1/50th, we're almost there. Oh, we can go down a little bit more. 10,000 ISO, and I'd be able to hand hold that shot at f16. If I don't want ISO 10,000, then I got to make other choices. Maybe I can't shoot at f16. Maybe I need to bring the f-stop down. But if I want everything in focus and I want to go lower than 10,000 ISO, and I want my shutter speed to stay 160, then I got to introduce more light to the shot. I got to light the shot with more light to be able to have my cake and eat it too, basically. To be able to have those three things the way I want. So your three settings are your aperture, your f-stop, your shutter speed, your aperture, and in this case, your ISO, and you're always balancing those three things. Those are the three things that will make your shot every time. So you're making decisions on those three things all the time. Okay, now let's go. I'm not going to do shutter speed because shutter priority because nothing's moving. It would just be me switching to the letter S on my camera, and then I would be able to set the shutter speed to whatever I wanted it to be. So if I wanted to freeze motion at 1/640th of a second, then it's telling me, well, in order to get that shot at this ISO, you're going to need to shoot at f5. So that's making that f-stop choice for me in shutter priority. That's it. So shutter priority or aperture priority, pick one of those. Usually going to be one or the other. Or let's go to my favorite, manual. Because manual, I get to change anything I want, any way that I want. So now I could say, for example, maybe I want to go down to f8. And maybe I want my ISO to be less. Let's say 800. Now, just because you're in control doesn't mean you can make all the right choices. Doesn't mean you're going to choose right. So f8, ISO 800, and shutter speed at 1/200th of a second, just a guess. Now, it will let me take that shot because I'm in manual. I can do whatever I want. But now the question is, will it look right? Let's see. I'm going to guess no, but let's see. So the shutter was very quick and the image is darker because I told it those are my settings. So I'm telling it I'm okay with that being darker. Or I need to make some adjustments. I could lower my shutter speed. That's okay because we're still within the realm of hand holding. Let's go down to a shutter speed of 1/80th of a second. And the image got brighter. But maybe I don't want ISO 800. Maybe I want ISO 400 to give me better quality. And let's go down to 1/60th of a second. So now I'm having to make a choice. Okay, what do I want to give up? Do I want to give up the f-stop? Do I want to give up the ISO? I can't give up the shutter speed because I'm on a tripod. Okay, let's get the shot where I want it to be. Let's do it that way. So I kind of want some shallow depth of field. So let's go down to, let's say, f3.5, which most of your lenses should be able to do. I want my ISO to be on 100 to give me the best possible quality. And now I can play with the shutter speed because I'm on a tripod. So if I adjust my shutter speed down to, let's say, 1/15th of a second, did it autofocus that properly? Let's autofocus it again. Here we go. 1/15th of a second will give me the exposure that I want, will give me the depth of field that I asked for, will give me the ISO that I asked for, and I'm on a tripod, so 1/15th of a second is just fine. So this is what I mean by you're making the choices. So Charlie's asking a question. Terry, do you have VR turned on, and if so, why? VR stands for vibration reduction. On a Canon, it's IS, image stabilization. In my D850, which is down there that we used last time, the lenses actually have a button on them, VR or not, turn it on or off. And there's actually two modes to choose. That means that the lens will try and stabilize your hand holding as best as possible. In this mirrorless camera, there is no VR on-off because it's in the body of the camera. The camera is doing the image stabilization, and most mirrorless cameras do that. But better question is, if you have a choice to turn it on or off, should you turn it on or should you turn it off? Absolutely, if you're hand holding, you want it on. That's what it's for. But if you're on a tripod, you actually want to turn it off. Because when image stabilization is on and you're not moving because you're on a tripod, it may actually make the image blurry by accident because it's looking to stabilize the image and it makes it blurry instead. So on a tripod, absolutely turn it off. Hand hold, absolutely turn it on. So that way you don't have to worry about it. Okay, See if anything else I need to address. All right. Hey, Kathleen's in the house. Howard's in the house. He'll be up later today. Dun, 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 dun. Lots of people saying hi. Okay. So now that we've mastered, well, not mastered, but we got those three things. We get a better understanding of what those three things are. What can we do now? Well, again, I'm at ISO 100, which is where I want to stay. I'm at f-stop 3.5 and shutter speed 1/15 of a second. And again, the shutter speed doesn't matter to me because I'm on a tripod. But if I was hand holding, I'd want to be on 1/60th or higher. Now, in this case, I do want to drop my f-stop down more. This lens can go all the way down to f1.8. That's really, really, really shallow depth of field. So let me show you the difference. Look at the background. Look at the stairs. Oh, you can't see it. Hold on. Look at the stairs. And look at that flower in the background. You can see them now. That's at F16. I'm going to temporarily, just to take the shot, put my camera on auto ISO. That means, just like auto anything, it's going to guess what it needs. And it's guessing ISO 2500. So at F16, this is the shot we get. Look at what's in focus. The flowers are in focus, or at least they should be. Let me check. Yep, the flowers are in focus. And the stairs, you can see them. You can see the flower behind here. You can see the apple on the easel. You can see those things. However, if I drop down to where most of your kit lenses are, let's say the lowest a kit lens usually does is f3.5. And let's get my focus point there. That's as shallow as f3.5 is going to let me get. I can still see a staircase. I can still see that there's a red flower behind it. And of course, my main subject's in focus. Now, if we go down, because this lens is a faster lens, that's what fast means, it can go all the way down to f1.8. We can now take the shot and look at the stairs when I take the shot and look at the red flower on the left. Oh, and we can and see the auto ISO guessed wrong. So I'm going to change the ISO back to ISO 100. Oh, the ISO is still guessing. Well, actually, my shutter speed is telling it that it. Let me up my shutter speed a little bit. So I'm going to let less light in. I'm going to have the shutter stay open, not as long. There we go. Actually, go down a little bit more. But on manual, I'm controlling my f-stop, my shutter speed, and my ISO. So my ISO is at 100, my f-stop's at 1.8, and now my shutter speed is 1/50th of a second, almost handheld range. And now you can barely make out that those are stairs, and you can see a red blob there and a green blob there for the apple and the other flower behind it. All right, I'm going to change my focus point too. Let's go up here. Let's take another one. There we go. I want those flowers to be nice and sharp. All right, so flowers are nice and sharp. Now we're going to introduce something a little fun. I'm going to introduce something that if you're ever shooting flowers, you definitely want one of these. It's a squirt bottle for water. So we're just going to squirt some water. And by the way, this one's an actual squirt bottle. You probably want one that does mist. I don't really want the drops to be that big and out of control, but I'm basically just putting some water drops on these roses that were plucked this morning. All right, and why am I doing that? Because it just creates a more interesting, realistic photo. All right, so let's go in. Take that shot. Now that we got our, oh yeah, those flowers are really starting to wilt already. But you will get some more interesting looking flowers with those water drops on them. It just basically makes it look cooler, for lack of a better definition. It just makes it look more realistic. And you can even do those on your fake flowers too, because they're plastic. But these are real roses that have already wilted because they're not in any water right now. That might be the problem too. That are already starting to wilt because they were picked this morning and they are kind of just like not there. Okay. How do you turn it off in the camera body? I don't know that there is an on-off for the image stabilization in the camera body. I think it does it the right way in the camera body. So I wouldn't worry about it too much. I haven't run into that being a problem. Okay. So-and-so released a video saying that ISO is meaningless these days if you're shooting in RAW. I disagree. So you go with whoever you want to go with. ISO will still add grain to your photo if it's too high. Now, what that person is basically saying is, I can adjust it because it's in RAW. Well, anytime you make the noise less, you're also making it less sharp, even in RAW. So that's up to you. I'd rather shoot at lower ISO and never have to deal with it than to shoot at ISO 20,000 or whatever and have to worry about taking the noise out. And noise is kind of one of those things that, oh, sorry, computer screen. Oh, nope, wrong one, that one. There we go. So sorry, I was showing you the water and you didn't even see it. So there we go. There's the water on the flowers. So ISO is kind of one of those things that it's up to you. It's your creative choice. Most people looking at your photos will never notice it. But if you care about the quality of your shot, then yes, you would want to shoot at a lower ISO. That's your call. All right. I'm not going to fault you one way or the other. Next question I see is noise reduction can only do so much. Exactly, Howard. What lens do I recommend when shooting portraits? My favorite portrait lenses are this one that's on here now, the 85 f1.8. I also have an older 85 f1.4, but the 1.8 is where I would go today, or my 70 to 200. So the lens I was using during the last portrait shoot, if you go to look at that stream or the replay of that stream, you'll see the lens that I use mostly for portraits. Is it best practice in ISO not to exceed 400? It's best practice in ISO not to exceed what you can stand or can't stand. If 400 is in the realm of you can stand it, don't go past 400. If 800 is in the realm of I still like the way it looks, I'm okay with that, then don't go past 800. It's literally a personal choice. I personally don't like to go past 800 if I can avoid it, but everybody is different. Everyone's camera is different. Everyone's threshold for what they can take is different. Terry, if the roses in the vase were being shot as a product and you want the entire thing in focus, what focus point would I use instead? I would still use the flowers because the flowers, you always use the subject as the focus point. So even if I want more of the vase in focus, I would still focus on the flowers, unless I'm selling the vase. If the vase is what I'm selling, then I might have it focused on the vase. But in most cases, people care about the beautiful part of the object, not the container. So I would focus on the flowers, putting more of it in focus, like an F7.1 or F8 or higher, so that more of the shot is in focus, but the focus point would always be the flowers. Would you shoot at 1/60th for handheld landscape shooting? Usually landscape, you're outside, thinking early morning, late evening, you can go higher than 1/60th. 1/60th, basically, don't look at that as what you should be setting it on. Look at that as that should be your minimum if you're hand holding. Always, if you can go higher, go higher. If you can go 180, go 1/250th of a second. Go higher, 1/500th of a second. Absolutely go higher because that's less likely to have a blur because your hand moved a little. Do I recommend a light box for product photography? Yeah. I mean, for small products, a light box is great because it's, again, giving you that self-contained space. With the setting focus point or area focus is still using autofocus? Yes, still autofocus. So, for example, let's say that I did focus on, I'm going to focus on one of these leaves. and you probably need to see that. So I'm moving the focus point down to one of the leaves. And now I'm going to press autofocus. And autofocus just gave me a green square letting me know now that leaf should be in focus. I'm not turning it manually. It's saying that's autofocus, that's what it should be on. Focus here, and you're going to get that leaf in focus. So yes, it is still using autofocus even in that case. So this is now in focus because that's what I focused on. And I didn't turn it, it automatically detected the focus. Okay, we got, wow, that went quick. We got like 9 minutes left. So let's go over some things really quick that I just don't want to make sure I don't forget. So another question that comes up, JPEG or RAW? I prefer RAW because I want the highest quality image that my camera can produce. The only time I would change that if I'm shooting sports, or if I don't shoot sports, but if I shot sports or a lot of fast moving things where I need it to go, in other words, I needed to capture a bunch of images, JPEGs are smaller, so you're going to capture more in your buffer than a RAW image would fill up your buffer quicker and be slower. So that would be, and Ashi, I'm glad this is making you want to take your camera out and shoot more. Great. Okay, so let's take a few minutes on tips and tricks, and then we'll be out of time, unfortunately. Wow, this went much faster than I thought it would go. Okay, we talked about a lot of this actually already. This is good. So one of the things that, and again, getting back to camera settings, one of the things, and you'll have to find this on your menu, the reason you look at the back of your screen after you take a shot and you look at the back of the screen is because you want to see it. You want to see if you got it. You also want to see if it's in focus. Now, usually on your camera, there's a button like a magnification that lets you click, tap, 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 and zoom in. But you can usually set your OK button, which it won't let me do it now because I'm shooting, but you can set your OK button to jump to 100% in one tap. So instead of you going click, 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 click to zoom in, oh yes, it's in focus, click, 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 click to zoom out, set your OK button for a 1-to-1 zoom, a 100% zoom, tap OK, 100%, look around, look at the focus, hit it again, it goes back down to what fits. Oh, the other thing is exposure compensation. So there's usually a button for it, and it will be like a button that says plus and minus on your camera usually. And when you hold down exposure compensation, that allows you to say, I want to make it a little brighter, or I want to make it a little darker. I want to cheat. I want to cheat my settings and say, I like this shot. Let me get it back on what I want to focus on. There we go. I like this shot, but I wish it were a little brighter, so I can actually change that to be like one stop brighter and then take the shot. So you can actually go a little more or a little less than what your settings are on. That's what exposure compensation does for you. All right, the next thing is, and we've got like 5 minutes. Okay, the next thing is white balance. Oh my God. So another setting you want to definitely be able to control is your white balance. So your white balance, if I were to go to info on this camera, it's over there. Oh, that's not it. Sorry, that's it. Okay, so this is showing it to me as symbols. I think I have a chart for it. There we go. So your white balance, and again, depending on your camera, you're usually going to have these. You may have a few more. Your camera may give you more choices. But your white balance is really controlling what the shot will look like, tone-wise. What the shot will look like. Will it be too warm? Will it be too cold? Will it be too blue? Will it be whatever? So how do you know which white balance to use? Should I use incandescent? Should I use cloudy? Should I use shade? Should I use tungsten? Should I use fluorescent? And the easiest tip to know which one you should use is look up. What do you see? Do you see the sun? Sunny. Do you see clouds? Cloudy. Are you under a tree? Shade. Is there a flash above you? Flash. Is there a continuous light above you? That's daylight, so sunny or daylight. So that's the easiest way to know. But if your camera supports live view, then you can go in and you can play with these and see it in the actual viewfinder before you make your choice. Obviously, that's the wrong one. That's the wrong one. That's the wrong one. Cloudy is the wrong one. Direct sunlight is the wrong one. Natural light auto is probably pretty good for this setup, or just straight up auto. Depends on you. But I like the natural light auto because that's a little warmer. We're inside of a house. It should be a little warmer. So just make sure you're on the right white balance for your scene. If you shoot in RAW, you can change it after the fact, but why change it if you don't have to? Why not just get it right the first time? Okay, now let's get out of this. Let's get out of full screen. Let's go into loop view. In loop view, last tip, I'm out of time, but while you're shooting tethered, you have access to your controls. So I can say, let's shoot this at ISO or f16, and I can take the shot. And then I'm going to get that shot at f16. It's totally dark. So let me switch my ISO to auto. Let's take it again. All right, and now I'm going to get that shot on what it's on the properly exposed one. So I can also set my white balance. I can say, give me the white balances that are in there. So I can choose that natural one, and I can actually shoot it right here in Lightroom with the shutter button and get that more natural beige look that I'm looking for. All right. You can also set your shutter speed while you're here as well. So I can go to any shutter speed that my camera supports, and I can take the shot. Now, last but not least, if you want to get, because even choosing a white balance mode may not be the right white balance mode. It may just, you might be in a situation where you just don't like the way it looks. So you can use one of these. It's a gray card, and the gray card, take one shot with it. And normally I would have the person hold it for me, or in this case, gonna see if I can lean it without it falling over. Oh no, there we go. All I need is one shot, so don't fall until I take the one shot. All right, I got the one shot. So now that white balance card is there, you take it out of the shot, and I can go in to my develop module one time. In my develop module, I can say, this is the neutral gray. Click on it with a white balance eyedropper. It sets the white balance to what should be proper white balance. I'm going to, wait, let me go back to auto actually. I'm going to set the white balance to what I think should be proper white balance. And then I can set the tether bar to say same as previous, meaning take the next shot, but adjust whatever I adjust based on what I just did. So now if I take another shot with the white balance out of it, it will adjust the shot, and you just saw it turn warm really quickly. It adjusted the shot based on the image I just took. Let me take another one. It's blue for a second, blue, and then boom, warm. So it applies that adjustment to it automatically in Lightroom. So tethering is why, the reason we tether is we want to see it on a nice big screen, want to be able to make changes, want to see if we got it in focus or not. We want to be able to adjust it and keep adjusting as we go. So those are the camera settings you should know. You should, if I got anything else real quick that I can cover in the last minute. We did the gray card. We got the bulk of it. There's a couple I didn't get a chance to cover, but you got the bulk of it. And unfortunately, I'm going to need to turn it back over to the Adobe Live team so they can go in and do the next one, which is the Photoshop Daily Creative Challenge. Why do you use a gray card in photo to balance white in video? Because that's just the way the technology works. Yep, shoot in RAW, not JPEG. I agree. And all right, what's the difference between Lightroom Classic and Lightroom? Go look at my previous classes, the first and second one. I cover that. And cameras use 18% gray. Yep. All right. So with that said, I'm going to have to head out and turn it over to the Adobe Live Studio. Hopefully I got all the questions answered that I can answer. I'm just making sure if I see anything else. Someday I can dream. You can dream right now. You don't have to wait till someday. All right. Okay, folks. Have a great day. Have a great weekend. Stay safe. Stay inside. Stay healthy. And hopefully we will see each other in person again soon. But not too soon, but soon enough. Guys, have a great one. Cheers, everybody.